As ever, it remains amateur hour at Meghan Markle's brand as ever. In fact, it has gotten obviously worse since Netflix left. As Meghan Markle attempts to sort of try and get the brand to work, she's decided to add her own aesthetic.
Meghan dropped a new as ever promo video on Monday afternoon, and the entire internet had the same reaction inside 9 minutes.
The public has a right to know that at the same time that Meghan was making all of these outrageous and untrue accusations about the British royal family, her treatment of staff behind the scenes was abominable.
Crappier than ever. That is as ever after its latest rebrand from Meghan Markle.
Meghan's aura, I can tell you what the reading is. I mean, it's a dark cloud. She's a downer. She's greedy. She's a grabber.
A jam brand sitting on 137,000 unsold jars. A full rebrand landing with a grammar slip right on its homepage. A Mother's Day tribute handed over through a faux Mickey Mouse glove. A bullying report that allegedly pushed palace staff into thoughts of self-harm, and children in the line of succession whose birth details are now being openly questioned in public conversations. Everything stacked up all at once in a way that feels almost unreal. This week, Meghan Markle's carefully built public image didn't just wobble. It started breaking apart in multiple directions at the same time, and the noise around it is not dying down anytime soon. To really understand why this moment hit so hard, you have to look at why the rebrand even exists in the first place, because nothing about this shift happened in a vacuum. It was already under pressure from the start. As Ever first launched roughly a year ago, introduced as a deeply personal passion project, tied to Meghan's lifestyle, her garden space, her kitchen moments, and her idea of sharing something warm and relatable with the public.
Meghan Markle is attempting to steer as ever into positive waters, and I would argue failing pretty miserably at it. Her latest series of pictures and videos and images are more pretentious than ever before. In a time where people are paying more than ever for simple things like gas and groceries, Meghan Markle is telling you that her brand is expensive, but yet cheap at the same time.
Built around connection and simplicity that felt intentionally different from traditional celebrity brands. It was presented as real, grounded, and authentic, something that would stand apart from the usual polished celebrity product lines, something that felt lived in and personal rather than manufactured for attention, and people were told it would grow naturally over time. Then, the numbers started coming out, and that's when things shifted sharply. In January, reports revealed that Meghan had around 137,000 boxes of her signature fruit stored away in a warehouse, sitting there unsold and waiting for movement that never really came. She was reportedly selling around 26 units per day, 137,000 boxes sitting still, while only a tiny number were moving, 26 a day, which instantly created a picture of a business struggling to find real traction in the market. At that pace, it would take somewhere between 7 to 10 years to clear inventory, and that's before even factoring in shelf life and expiration dates that don't wait around for slow sales cycles. The teas weren't moving in any meaningful volume either, and the hot toddy kit, which sounded appealing on paper and concept, didn't seem to connect with buyers in reality, no matter how it was positioned. The baking mixes tied to the Netflix partnership quietly disappeared after Netflix stepped away from the brand in March.
I think she's sort of starting to lose interest as the brand isn't doing well. I think she's kind of like, I don't want to take the time. I just want to get this out. I just want to get this sold. And I get it, but like she wants to apparently run a multi-million-dollar, if not billion-dollar empire, and she ain't going to do it like this. So I think she's still freaked out after all the stock reveals in January. And I think those were true. And I think she's freaking out about it. And I think they've wasted a bunch of their money in her as ever stock and it's not moving. And again, there was a report from the New York Post that there's some sort of warehouse for Netflix, like a PR room where it's just stacked with as ever goods and they're just basically giving it away to staff members who want it.
Leaving behind what reports described as millions in unsold inventory, roughly around the $10 million range, just sitting there without momentum. Now, when a brand decides to rebrand after just 12 months, that doesn't usually signal confidence or expansion. It signals pressure, urgency and correction happening behind the scenes. Successful brands don't typically tear down their identity that quickly. They evolve, they scale, they build on what works. But here the direction shifted into reset mode instead. Meghan didn't introduce a wave of new products or expand the lineup in a meaningful way. Instead, the focus turned heavily toward visuals, presentation, and identity. More photos, more styling, and a refreshed digital face for the same core offering. It started to feel like a business repainting the walls while the foundation underneath was already under strain. And that contrast didn't go unnoticed. And then the rebrand rollout itself added even more fuel to the conversation, because instead of calming things down, it intensified attention from every angle. The promotional video dropped on a Monday afternoon, posted across Meghan's personal Instagram, the official As Ever account, and the brand homepage all at once.
And then we had the Variety article today saying that Netflix has $10 million worth of As Ever product that they have to get rid of.
People are quitting Netflix and saying, here are my 2 weeks. And Netflix's parting gift is As Ever, like, take it, get it out of here.
Wow.
That is the parting gift when you say goodbye to Netflix. So they are overflowing with product, that the public doesn't want. We don't want a $64 candle that doesn't have a wick. Who wants fruit spread when you can go to the store and get jam for $2? It doesn't make sense. And Netflix themselves, some insiders have said it, As Ever as a whole, did not make sense to the Netflix ecosystem.
A disaster of a brand, which is Meghan Markle, who's sort of officially admitting defeat. This is why we're getting the rebrand, guys, is the defeat. The brand is not going well. I don't think a year in you need to be rebranding unless your brand really sucks, and hers does. And like we sort of maybe knew something was coming because, of course, a sizing guide sort of was live on the website for a second. And As Ever has had a series of website blunders from the beginning. I've worked with people who have built websites, and there are functions that can absolutely let you have a live website be live in terms that you can edit it and see how it looks to a consumer, but it's not live.
A coordinated release designed for maximum visibility and impact. There was no dialogue, only soft music, warm lighting, and carefully staged visuals, all wrapped in a polished aesthetic, meant to sell a feeling as much as a product. It was introduced as part of a campaign for 2 new items, an orange marmalade and a raspberry preserve, presented in a way that leaned heavily into lifestyle storytelling rather than traditional product marketing. Within 90 minutes, fashion observers had already identified nearly every outfit shown in the video.
Meghan just dropped. I don't know how to do this. You're looking at that. I don't know how to. I'm doing this video because I have to, but I couldn't stop laughing doing this. But okay, I have to say this. I have to do this. Meghan dropped a new As Ever promo video on Monday afternoon, and the entire internet had the same reaction inside 9 minutes. The video is sold to the audience as a marmalade campaign or whatever she is selling. It's not marmalade, it's jam, right? Okay.
Breaking down each look in detail across social platforms and entertainment outlets. Nothing in that video appeared accidental. Every frame felt controlled, every angle carefully composed, every moment designed to communicate something beyond just food. The opening shot shows Meghan barefoot, sitting cross-legged on a kitchen counter, though not confirmed to be her own kitchen, reading a book beside a tray of cookies, staged in a way that feels deliberately casual but highly curated. Then comes a floor-length ivory halter gown with an open back, later identified within hours as a Stella McCartney second wedding dress, layered with an oversized cream blazer that shifts the tone between formal and relaxed luxury. A glass of champagne appears in hand while marmalade is positioned as the product being promoted, blending celebration imagery with branding in a way that feels more fashion campaign than food advertisement. Next, a deep red silk slip dress appears, featuring a plunging neckline and slow-motion movement, with champagne pouring in a way that feels cinematic and stylized rather than practical or product-focused. Fashion commentators quickly labeled it a lingerie-inspired aesthetic trend, while online reactions were far less restrained, with comparisons spreading across Reddit, ex-British tabloids, and American entertainment spaces almost instantly. One recurring comparison that kept appearing described it as something resembling a late-night cable movie from the mid-90s, the kind of visual tone people remember from after midnight television programming. Then comes the moment that really froze attention online. Meghan leaning back, tilting her head, closing her eyes, and slowly running both hands across herself in a way that became instantly dissected frame by frame across social media platforms. That moment became central to how the campaign was interpreted, overshadowing the actual product entirely. And here's the detail that keeps standing out when you look closely at the full video. Meghan never actually eats the product. Not once across the entire campaign. She lifts the jar, she holds it, she looks at it with a focused expression as if it represents something larger than just food, but she never takes a bite. She doesn't drink the tea either, even in a setting designed to promote consumption and enjoyment. The actual consumption never happens, which shifts the entire tone of the project into something more symbolic than practical. In a campaign built around selling edible products, the central figure never interacts with the product in the most direct way possible, and that absence becomes impossible to ignore. Because at that point, it stops being about jam or tea or branding strategy in a traditional sense. It turns into something else entirely, something centered less on the product itself and more on the image being projected around it. It was never just about the food on display. It has always been about her. When you step back and look at the direction this whole as-ever situation is heading, the question almost writes itself in a messy, uncomfortable way. What comes next on the website? A full-blown personality marketplace? Maybe even the internet's most controversial upgrade? Something like a paywalled, exclusive platform? The jar of spread starts to feel less like a product and more like a prop, just an excuse to keep the camera rolling. And that single idea basically becomes the entire spine of the as-ever story being pushed into public view. What makes it even more awkward is that nothing here feels like a refined, high-end brand rollout. It doesn't land as smooth or controlled in any real sense. The performance being shown doesn't come across as natural or effortless at all. And instead, it feels heavily forced from the outside looking in. Every frame, every pose, every angle gives off the same impression. Someone trying extremely hard to appear effortless, glamorous, and cinematic, but never fully landing in that space, no matter how carefully it's staged. She doesn't settle into the camera, she doesn't blend into the environment, and the end result is a constant feeling of mismatch between intention and execution. She can't really ease into a natural presence on screen, and the result is that everything looks consciously constructed rather than lived in or organic. One shot flows into another with this same energy, like a repeated attempt to hit a mood that keeps slipping just out of reach. A viewer summed it up in a brutally direct way, saying she looks like someone who broke into a space she doesn't belong in and is imagining a life inside it, completely detached from the reality of the situation, which is exactly the kind of reaction that started circulating online with heavy commentary and disbelief. Alongside the video rollout came the redesigned website, and this is where things start tipping into almost unintentionally comedic territory. The photography is dark, moody, and heavy in tone, almost like an autumn campaign that got dropped into a bright spring or early summer season, creating a visual mismatch that feels off from the start. The structure of the site itself is cluttered in a way that doesn't align with the idea of a minimal lifestyle brand. There are multiple categories and sections that suggest a large, fully developed product ecosystem, even though the actual range of items is still extremely small, more like a starter collection than a full-scale brand empire. It tries very hard to present itself as a complete lifestyle universe, but the reality is that everything shown could practically fit on a single retail shelf without much effort. The homepage even includes a recipe section which adds to the confusion about what the core identity of the brand actually is meant to be. In one of the descriptions, the product is labeled as raspberry jam, even though the brand specifically avoids using that term and instead calls it fruit spread. That detail might seem small on the surface, but it creates a strange contradiction because the language on the site doesn't even fully align with the branding choices being made. At that point, the messaging starts to feel inconsistent, almost like the brand itself is struggling to define its own identity clearly, which makes the entire presentation feel less polished and more uncertain than intended. Then comes the bottom section of the page where things shift from confusing to outright viral within hours. In large, bold text, the message reads, "And this is real, you're beautiful, Y-O-U-R," using the possessive form instead of your, and that grammatical slip immediately stands out in a space that is supposed to reflect elegance, refinement, and attention to detail. That single error, something that would typically be corrected instantly in any professional editorial environment, was spotted almost immediately and screenshotted before it could disappear. It was later fixed within 24 hours, but by then the damage in terms of public perception had already spread widely across social platforms. That mistake isn't just about punctuation or spelling. It becomes symbolic of something larger, a signal that the rollout may not have had the level of editorial oversight expected for a brand positioned in that luxury lifestyle space. It suggests a pace of execution that feels rushed, with content possibly being pushed live without multiple layers of review or cross-checking, which naturally raises questions about how structured the operation really is behind the scenes. And then there's the kitchen situation, which adds another layer to the entire perception puzzle. The kitchen shown in the promotional material and across the website is not actually the kitchen associated with Meghan herself. Her real kitchen, as has been observed in earlier contexts, has a darker, more traditional 1990s farmhouse aesthetic that doesn't photograph in the same bright, clean, highly stylized way used in the campaign visuals. So, instead of using that space, a different, brighter kitchen was reportedly used or staged for filming, creating a setting that feels more like a set than a lived-in home environment. That choice adds another layer of disconnect, especially for a brand that is built heavily around themes like authenticity, homemaking, and personal connection. The irony becomes hard to ignore. The messaging is about realness and warmth, yet the visual environment is carefully selected and adjusted to deliver a very specific aesthetic version of that realness, rather than the actual lived reality behind it. And then there is the absence that people keep noticing once they really start looking closely. For a brand that is built around hosting, sharing, gathering, and the idea of bringing people together around a table, there is a very noticeable lack of any actual people in the entire presentation. No guests sitting around, no friends interacting, no family presence in the frame, just a single figure placed into highly styled environments, alone in expensive clothing, interacting with carefully positioned products. That absence becomes louder the more you watch it. The imagery shows luxury fashion pieces, like a multi-thousand-dollar dress paired with high-end styling choices, all centered around a relatively inexpensive jar of spread that sits visually at the core of the campaign. It creates a contrast that feels intentional, but also visually striking in a way that divides audience perception. Meanwhile, outside of the branding world, real-life financial pressure is something many people are dealing with directly. Fuel prices, grocery costs, and everyday expenses are all rising in ways that affect daily decision-making for households. Against that backdrop, seeing a highly stylized luxury campaign centered on something as ordinary as a jar of spread becomes a talking point in itself, because the contrast between presentation and public reality feels sharp and unavoidable. And that is where the conversation ends up circling back again and again. It's not just about products or websites or campaigns anymore. It becomes about perception, timing, and how disconnected a brand feels from the audience it is trying to speak to. Because when everything is stripped back, the same question keeps resurfacing in different forms, louder each time it's asked. She is not just missing the room anymore. She's not even standing in the same version of it anymore. When you zoom out and really look at how this Mother's Day situation unfolded, it suddenly turns into something way bigger than a simple missed post or a delayed message, and that's where the conversation starts getting loud in every direction at once. Something very specific happened on May 10th in the United States, which was Mother's Day, and it immediately became a talking point across social media, commentary spaces, and entertainment reporting circles. Meghan Markle, who in previous high-profile interviews, including the widely discussed Oprah conversation, described her mother Doria as her grounding force, her emotional anchor, and the person who helped her stay stable through everything she went through publicly, reportedly posted nothing at all for her on that day, not on her personal account, and not through the As Ever platform either. That silence became the first spark of discussion, because in the modern social media world, absence is never just absence. It is interpreted, dissected, and filled in by audiences looking for meaning where nothing is officially said. Then things shifted again when attention moved toward product releases happening at the same time. 2 new candles, priced at around $64 each, were launched and named after Archie and Lily's birthdays, and they were made available right on Mother's Day morning, which instantly created a contrast in public perception about timing, priorities, and messaging. That timing became part of the conversation itself because instead of a traditional personal tribute, the focus appeared to be on product rollout activity, which people online immediately began comparing and debating across platforms. A delayed Mother's Day acknowledgement to Doria eventually surfaced about 24 hours later, but by then, the narrative had already taken shape in public discussion. That delayed message was then placed inside a broader visual story involving a Disneyland trip carousel, which was centered around Archie's birthday celebration, imagery rather than a direct or focused tribute moment. And within that carousel, the most widely circulated image used by commentators and royal watchers was a moment featuring Mickey Mouse in full costume, complete with oversized foam gloves, appearing to kiss Doria's hand during a theme park meet and greet setting. That visual quickly became the focal point of discussion, not just because of the setting, but because of how unusual it felt as a public-facing tribute image in contrast to expectations of a more traditional or personal acknowledgement. Many observers online framed it as a symbolic moment, interpreting it in different ways depending on their perspective, and that's where the story started expanding far beyond just Mother's Day content. Because at the same time, additional reporting began circulating from various British outlets, suggesting that Doria Ragland may have reportedly stepped away from the Montecito household environment, with claims that she had moved out entirely. These reports were not officially confirmed, but they circulated widely enough to become part of the ongoing public discussion surrounding family dynamics and internal relationships. The framing, from sources discussing it, leaned heavily into the idea of differences in outlook, lifestyle, and parenting approaches between mother and daughter, which then added another layer of interpretation to a relationship that has often been publicly described as extremely close and supportive. That contrast between the previously stated unbreakable bond narrative and newer circulating reports created a gap that audiences immediately filled with speculation, debate, and reinterpretation. At the same time, another long-running topic resurfaced again in commentary spaces: a reported bullying investigation connected to palace staff complaints. According to multiple media reports over time, there had been claims raised by former staff members regarding workplace experiences while working within the Sussex household structure during their time as working royals. Some accounts, as described in reporting, suggested emotionally difficult working conditions, and some claims even stated that certain individuals experienced significant stress-related effects. Though all of these remain part of disputed and heavily debated narratives rather than publicly verified conclusions, these allegations reportedly led to an internal review process commissioned within royal structures, the contents of which have never been fully released to the public. And that lack of transparency has itself become part of the ongoing discussion, because without a complete public document, the story exists in fragments, leaked accounts, second-hand summaries, and competing interpretations. Some palace-related staff documentation processes are historically known to involve confidentiality agreements and formal restrictions on disclosure, which further limits what can be openly confirmed or denied. That information gap naturally fuels more speculation because audiences are left to interpret incomplete narratives without a final authoritative version of events. In parallel, there have been claims in reporting circles that individuals who previously worked closely with Harry and Meghan eventually left their roles after internal disagreements or professional tensions. Some narratives describe a pattern where advisors or communications professionals exited after raising concerns or offering strategic direction that reportedly did not align with decisions being made internally. These accounts, while widely discussed, remain part of a contested narrative landscape, with no single unified version of events accepted across all sources. One widely mentioned example in commentary is Tyler Perry, who provided support during a transitional period when Harry and Meghan relocated to California, including housing and logistical assistance, as reported in public accounts. Later discussions online suggested a perceived lack of continued public connection, with some framing it as distance or reduced communication, while others argue that private relationships naturally evolve without needing public validation. Either way, the narrative became part of a broader discussion about loyalty, relationships, and shifting alliances within high-profile circles. Then, the conversation shifted again toward the next major talking point: children and royal succession discussions. Archie and Lilibet, often referred to in public reporting as part of the line of succession to the British throne, became central figures in renewed online debates about royal protocols, documentation, and eligibility frameworks. Some online commentators and discussion threads raised questions about birth circumstances and succession rules, often referencing hypothetical scenarios around surrogacy and eligibility requirements under traditional royal guidelines. It is important to note that these are circulating discussions and claims online rather than officially confirmed issues, but they continue to reappear in public discourse due to the lack of clear visibility into private family documentation. These conversations have contributed to a wider environment of speculation that repeatedly resurfaces whenever new developments or media moments occur. Within the broader royal family context, Prince William is often described in reporting and commentary as having adopted a more structured and firm long-term outlook regarding future roles, responsibilities, and internal boundaries. Some analysts and commentators suggest that reconciliation between William and Harry appears increasingly unlikely based on past public events, interviews, and ongoing separation of roles within royal structures. Reports and commentary have framed the relationship as deeply strained, with limited signs of formal repair or reintegration into shared royal duties. At the same time, there are narratives describing Harry as being under significant emotional and logistical pressure due to relocation, legal constraints, and family positioning across two countries. Some discussions online even claim that California custody laws would make relocation with children extremely complex, though these remain generalized interpretations rather than verified case-specific rulings. All of this builds into a broader narrative of separation, geographic, emotional, and institutional. Meanwhile, the brand side of the situation continues to face its own set of challenges, with reports pointing toward unsold inventory levels and ongoing restructuring efforts. The Centerbold charity situation has also been mentioned in various reports, including legal tensions and defamation-related proceedings, involving organizational leadership discussions, which further adds complexity to the public image landscape surrounding multiple interconnected figures. And in the background of all this, Prince Andrew's upcoming legal proceedings continue to be discussed in media cycles, adding yet another layer of royal family-related attention in the broader news environment. When you stack all of these narratives together, brand struggles, family tensions, legal battles, shifting relationships, and public perception issues, it creates an environment where every new update is interpreted through multiple overlapping lenses. Nothing exists in isolation anymore in this story. Every detail feeds into a larger ongoing public narrative that keeps expanding with every report, post, or visual moment released. And that is why the as-ever situation, the Mother's Day timing, the delayed acknowledgements, the imagery choices, and the surrounding reporting all get pulled into one massive, constantly evolving conversation that refuses to settle. Because at this point, the audience isn't just watching isolated events anymore. They are watching a continuous storyline unfold in real time, and every new piece gets added straight into the same growing narrative thread. And just like that, the discussion keeps rolling forward with no real pause in sight. Comment, like, and subscribe for more updates.